This is Mr. McSwain. Welcome to another video where we're going to be talking about Packet Tracer. Now, in this video, I'm going to be dealing with the basics of Packet Tracer as far as just the icons and the configuration as far as what we're going to be dealing with. Now, as we get into this, you're going to notice that the file edit options and all of this are at the top of the screen, same as what we're used to. The only thing I want to mention in here is that we can go into options and preferences and then go to the tab labeled font and be able to actually change the size of our font in order to make it easier to read. Alright, now other than that, the icons that we're going to be dealing with in here are going to be down at the bottom right or bottom left hand corner. And these are going to be the icons for all of the equipment that we're going to be using. Okay, so now under these icons, you'll notice that the top ones are going to be the groupings. This is going to be network devices, end devices, components, connections, miscellaneous, and multi-user. For this, we're only going to be dealing with network devices, end devices, and connections. Okay, now underneath that, you're going to notice that there's subcategories. Under routers, you're going to notice that there are a listing of all business style routers. Okay, now these are going to require a CLI interface. If you are looking for a router that is similar to your home router that actually has a GUI interface, you're going to want to go to wireless devices, and there is home router listed. All right. Now, other than the routers, we're going to be going into switches, and we're going to focus mainly on the 2960. The 2960 is the most common that is out in the field today. Now, you will know that there are other legacy style switches that are listed here, but I would not focus on those. I would strictly stick with the 2960 as, like I said, it is the most common in the field. Alright, other than that, we're going to go into end devices, and we're going to mainly be sticking with the first initial end devices group, which is going to consist of PC, laptop, server, and several other devices. Now, there are Internet of Things devices under home. There's some other smart city stuff, system on a chip stuff for industrial or PLCs, and then some power grid related information. But we're not going to be focusing on that in this because it's just basic configuration. Alright. Lastly, under connections, you're going to notice that there is a lightning bolt. I do not recommend using the lightning bolt. Yes, it does say it will automatically choose the appropriate connection. However, this does not help you with learning the connections by heart on where they need to go. Next, we have the console cable. This is going to be how we're going to interact with the CLI through a terminal connection. Then we have a straight through crossover or straight through cable, patch cable, then a crossover cable. Now, the reason that I say don't use the lightning bolt whenever it comes to these two is because remember that a patch cable is for 99% of the time. The crossover cable is used whenever you're going from like devices. This is going to be switch to switch, router to router. However, I am aware that if you are in today's, with most equipment that is being released today, that this is not a necessity because the ports on the device will actually auto-configure to make the wire a crossover cable. However, it is nice to know which cable is needed. Other than that, you have fiber optic, phone, coaxial, serial connections, and then several other that are made for like Internet of Things and USB. We're not going to need those. We're going to stick with the straight through, crossover, and console. Alright, so in order to get an icon onto the screen, we're going to go back to network devices, routers. We're going to choose the 4331, and then there's two options. One, click on it with your left mouse button, drag it up on the screen, and release the mouse button. That's option one. Option two, left click on the device until it comes into this no symbol, and then left click onto the screen anywhere that you want to place this plus sign. Now, once you have multiple devices out on the screen, there's really only one way to get rid of it, but there's two styles to do so. One, you can click on the device until it is highlighted. This will typically bring up the interface. However, we want to close that because we want to delete it. Then we're going to come up here to this icon that is two icons over from the select tab, and we're going to hit delete. This is going to prompt us if we want to delete that router. We say yes. Now, notice how whenever we click delete that it stayed into this kind of an X pattern with black X's. That means that if I wanted to click onto this router and configure it, it's not going to click on it to configure it, it's going to click on it to delete it. So remember that once you delete something, you stay in delete mode. This is where I was mentioning there's two ways to get out of it. One, you can hit cancel, and that's going to automatically shift you back over into the cancel area. Now, second option, if you click into the white area around or away from any devices, because if you have multiple devices up on the screen, you're not going to want to delete the wrong thing. So if you click on the white area outside of all the devices and then click on the delete key, you can actually come in and you see that it turns into the X again, and now you can actually point at the device you want to delete and be prompted. Now, again, if I hit cancel, it will go back into select. However, if I choose delete, notice that it stays the X even though there's nothing else on the screen. In order to change it back to select, we have to actually hit the select button. All right. Now, when it comes to cabling, again, I'm going back onto the select button. I'm going to drag a 4331 onto the screen. I'm going to go to switches and drag a 2960. And then I'm going to come over here to end devices and I'm going to get a PC. Now, in order to cable these together, I will go into connections and I will choose a straight through cable because these are not like devices. They are all separate, three different separate types of devices. What I want to click on is on the laptop, I'll click on Fast Ethernet port, and then I will come up to the switch, and then I will choose the port that I want to connect into and left click on that port. Now, to do it again, I have to click on the cable again, and then click on the device, choose the port I want to, left click on that port, click on the device that I want to connect it to, and left click on the port I want to connect. Now, when it comes to configurations, there's two ways of doing this, and I'm going to show you here in the introduction. What I like to do is I actually like to drag a laptop out onto the screen. The reason for this is it gives you a real life kind of feel to the situation, because in Packet Tracer, when you click on the switch itself, or the router for that matter, you will actually get a third tab up here. This third tab is the CLI of the switch or the device. As you can see, we're in user exec mode and we're ready to be elevated into privileged exec for configuration. However, in the real world, you cannot interact with the CLI on an intermediary device directly. It is not possible. There is no output from it that you can actually see at the device itself. So even though this is a capability inside of Packet Tracer, it is not a real life option. In real life, you would actually have to connect to either the machine that is near you and near the switch, or you will have to have a laptop ready for configurations. Now, I like to have a laptop because it gives me the look and feel of something that is in the real world. Now, in order to do this style of configuration, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the console cable. Now, a console cable in real life is going to have a COM port on one end, which is a 9-pin connection that looks similar to a VGA cable, but it's 5 pins on top and 4 pins on bottom. What we're going to do is click on the laptop and choose the RS-232 port, which is that COM port. Then we will go to the device we want to configure. We will click on it, and then we will choose the console port. Now notice how the icon of this one looks similar to the rest of them. That is because on the other end of a console port, a cable, the port is an RJ45, similar to any other Ethernet port. So we're going to click on that. That is going to give us our terminal connection. Once we have our terminal connection, we can then go into laptop. We will go over to the desktop tab, and then we will choose terminal. Now, in Packet Tracer, terminal is the only option that you have. In the real world, you'll need to get familiar with one of the terminal-based applications that are out there. The two that I'm familiar with that I suggest is, one is TerraTerm. Now, TerraTerm is a very simplistic application. It's very cut and dry. It's very basic. It is easy to deal with, and it can strictly be used for configuration purposes. The other one that I suggest if you're interested in penetration testing or advanced scripting into switches and routers, I would learn PuTTY, P-U-T-T-Y. This application is similar to TerraTerm, only allows for much more interactions and interfaces. So, but in Packet Tracer, we're going to click Terminal. We're going to keep the baud rate and everything the same. We're going to click OK. And now, as you can see, we are inside of the terminal of the switch. So if I hit Enter, notice that we are down at the user exec mode. Now, just to show you, I will pull back up the one from the switch, and as you can see, the two CLIs are exactly the same. Even if I hit enter on one, it appears on the other. For the purposes of Packet Tracer, if you are using the CLI on the interface or the CLI through the terminal, it is absolutely personal preference as far as if you'd rather have a white background with black lettering or a black background with white lettering, entirely up to you. This can also be changed under options and preferences, where we went to change the size of the font. If you'll notice underneath that, you can actually change the background color and the foreground color of the font. Alright, so now with that being said, I'm going to have future videos where we actually go in and configure these devices. Like I said, this is just a walkthrough on how to establish the icons and to be able to be prepared for working with Packet Tracer. So this is Mr. McSwain. I hope you have found the video both informative and entertaining, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.